industry.
Have you looked into Sharia banking in Australia?
It's getting pretty heavy, isn't it?
All the banks are into it. They don't pay any stamp duty when they take over the house.
Yeah.
They don't pay any gift duty. They pay no tax. And yet each of us has to do that if we want to own a house. With Sharia banking, you just go in and you find all these guys with nominee bank accounts within the Sharia system. These bank accounts are topped up from receipts from the halal certification, and then they give the money on this bloke. They're all secret, but the bloke that owns the account in the Sharia banking, he goes and buys the house on your behalf, and then he rents it to you.
Yes.
And then at the end of the period, he gives it back to you on what's called a habib, which is a free gift. But for some reason, it doesn't attract gift tax.
No gift tax.
No.
It must be because
Yeah.
someone's been frightened of called an Islam.
So they've worked out how to buy a house and not do what we do. And that is what we have to pay all our taxes, pay all the rightful things we need to pay. They don't pay anything.
Yeah.
They pay no interest. So they're not allowed to receive interest. I'm sorry, but they're not allowed to charge interest, but Muslims can receive interest under Sharia law. So, mate, it's growing like Topsy and no one seems to care about it. The halal stuff does go to extreme organisations overseas, and they do it via these various charity sham companies that looks like it's going to some charity. It's not going to charity at all. It's going to Hamas in particular, and it's going into the Syrian organisation in northern Syria and northeastern Iraq. And there are, I got a thing this morning which knocked my socks off. The United Arab Republic has put out 72 organisations that are now regarded and deemed to be terrorist organisations. And when you go through that, you think, how in the hell have these things grown? 72 of them, all with different names, all trying to do the same thing, all trying to produce a caliphate out of Sharia law. It's just mind-blowing what's going on, and no one seems to want to do anything about it because the government, for some reason, has decided that it wants this inclusive thing with the Muslim leaders. But it's the Muslim leaders that are the problem. It's they who are radicalising the kids. The kids are already radicalised when they get on the aeroplane to go to Syria. So they're in a difficult position. I mean, even Scott Morrison was out there, rubbing shoulders with the Islams and pretending they're good blokes. They're not. They're not. They preach radicalism. And that's the problem. And the government won't do anything about it because they don't want to be seen as racist. That's their problem.
And as someone pointed out at the rally, you did, I think, Islam's not a race anyway.
No. It's a faith. It's a faith. It's a faith-based ideology, and it's been around for 1400 years. It was about 700 years behind Christianity, and I'm not saying Christianity wasn't evil. Of course it was. It did horrible things, but Christianity has grown to become more moderate, whereas the Islamic faith is still steeped in its original belief with Muhammad. And the hadiths of Muhammad, which are regulated by the Grand Muftis, who are the legal instructors of what the hadiths mean. And the radicalism is at the top, not at the bottom. It's at the top. And until the government realises that and does something about it, then we're in for a bit of a hiding because, these things happen by stealth. But you'll find that the Islamic people, basically the immigrants can't work because, like I was saying, they've got to pray 5 times a day, they get Friday afternoons off, and they want to try and convince you that Islam's good in the meantime. So they're unemployable, basically. So they're all on disability pensions. There's nothing wrong with them, but they've got a friendly Islamic doctor. So that's the way that works. But all left-wing parties or parties that lean left, like the Greens, Labour, and so on, they are pro-Islam because Islam supports socialism, because that's all they can live on. That's all they can survive on. They need the social services so that they can survive.
Do you think they're being duped by the fact that Islam is far more extremist, even in there, than the most extreme left-wing organisation? Like Sharia law, for example, dictates who you can screw, when you can screw, what wives you're going to have, how many wives you can have, how marriage goes, how you treat Jews and Christians. The whole of life is regulated by this.
Yeah, but I don't think that the Labor Party or the Greens know anything about Sharia. I honestly don't. I don't think they've even looked at it. They just looked at, we don't want Muslims touched because they're our voting base in 20 electorates west of Sydney. They are the reason we'll get elected. Don't tell me any more about them. That's not nice. That's the way it works.
It's bizarre how they expect a law like Sharia and all its various horrible activity can become law, as it has in parts of England and Europe, when it hasn't passed any democratic process.
That's right. Because they're in enclaves, they're in ghettos, where the government, even in England, I think it's going to be overturned shortly, but even in England, the government has allowed them to have Sharia law within the Westminster system. That's
without any
incredible
law passed.
Without any law being passed. Yeah. No, it's just outrageous. But that is being turned around. That's being stopped. I mean, the burqa now has to be can't be worn in France. It can only be worn in certain circumstances in England. The Scandinavian countries are starting to cut down on it. I mean, the Norwegian Prime Minister has deported all Muslims who have caused trouble, and anyone who is connected to a violent organisation.
Even if they were born there?
Sorry?
Even if they were born there?
Well, they didn't say, and that's the question I asked when I ran the post. I said, how do you deport someone who was born here? I mean, what can you do? They arrived back from Syria. What do you say? Give us your passport. You're not going anywhere. Well, he can't go anywhere if he's going to stay here. But if you deport them, where to? Who's going to have him if he's got a criminal record? What country's going to take him? Who's going to pay his airfare there? Where can he get naturalised? He hasn't been invited anywhere. So he's stuck. He's stateless. He's stateless. That's the problem. He's stateless. My suggestion was that most of the offshore processing centres are now damn near empty. Send them there. Send them there.
Yep.
Because you can't send them to another country. I don't believe you can do that. But the problem here is that most of the people here that are radical Muslims are sons and daughters of Muslims who arrived. That's the problem. 50% of Muslims in Australia right now were born here.
I saw a statistic the other day that said that 68% increase, they've had a 68% increase in the number of Muslims in Australia since 2002.
I believe that.
Between the two census.
Yeah, I would think that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah. Another thing that happened to me way back in the 90s is I had a girlfriend who was a teacher, and she was in the southern area, around Lakemba, and she was teaching 14-year-old girls. They couldn't put her into these 14-year-old girls, Muslim girls, Australian-born Muslim girls, into a normal school because they just simply refused to learn, because, as she said to me, their entire purpose in life was to get to an age of 16, so then they could go back to Lebanon, which is where they came from, and marry a good Muslim boy and bring him back here to Australia as an Australian citizen. So that's how far back it goes, and that's how insidious it's been.
Mate, I'll tell you now, the Muslim community are the most sophisticated, the most clued, the most devious, and the most know-all bloody organisation you can ever imagine. I mean, they are so up with everything normally arranged before they even get here. And I can give you one example of this, is that most of those families are on $3 and $4 grand a week. That's only the disability pension is the start. What happens is this: a bloke moves into a street, he's next door to his neighbour from Lebanon or wherever they came from. Both Muslims, all Muslims in the street. The lady here, who has 9 kids, says to the child services department, I can't handle the kids anymore, I'm sorry, I need a carer. Oh, you want a foster child? Yeah, okay. But I can tell you the best foster child is the lady next door. She's my sister, so she even knows the kids. She knows them, so they'll be well looked after there. Right. So the government gives the lady next door $200 per week per child. Right. Now the lady next door says, well, now I can't handle all my kids. So my kids have got to go to foster care to this other person who knows them. Right. So another $200 per kid per week. They're all getting it, right? They're all getting it. Plus the extras like, what's that thing they use for learning difficulty bonuses and all that sort of stuff. I mean, all that stuff, you know, they get everything, everything.
Everything imaginable.
And in the end, no kid changes houses because they've all got different names and they change them anyway. So when someone comes around to check it, they just see a bunch of kids. This is going on now in West Sydney, like it's just like wildfire. It's the greatest scam that's ever been known in Australia, apart from halal certification. The greatest scam that's ever been going on in Australia, right out there in West Sydney, and we can do nothing about it because it would be seen to be racist or Islamophobic.
Isn't it time that we start to do something about that Islamophobic, that law, is that the laws?
How do we do it, mate? I mean, I can agitate, and a lot of other people will agitate, but how do you get a government to admit or to agree to come down on one section of the community? I mean, if it's the law, it's the law. You know, I mean, you're allowed to do it, they do it. They already knew it before they came here. They know how to, because they've been told by those who are already here. Hey, come here, we'll tell you what to do, set it all up, you know. First thing you do is get a home buyer's grant if you want the Sharia Banking and get a house. And, you know, it's all wrong, mate. But our people are suffering. Absolutely. Our pensioners are suffering because there's no money to pay them a decent pension because the Muslims have got it all.